Okay, good evening, and welcome to the second week of our product management course. And so my name is Nathan, and I am pleased to be able to coach and teach this class today. Today, we will be exploring the product management ecosystem. That is how to examine the product development cycle through the lens of the stakeholders that you will work with and the data you will use. Before I start, I'll do a quick walkthrough of what we did last week, and then I'll give like a couple of minutes for any questions, and I can answer them, address them before we move on. So last week we touched on what a product manager is, the role of a product manager, and the relationships PMs need to manage. Okay, so in short, we have a few things here that we want to, I just want to touch up on, right? So let me share my screen real quick. I can just talk about it also. So basically, the role of the product manager and their exact responsibilities change across industries, and they vary. Hello, welcome, fellow. Hello. Hello. All right, so I'm going to continue here. So I was saying that there's a lot of ambiguity of the product management role, right? The reason being that the role differs based on the company that you're in or the type of industry that you're in, right? So I'm just going over what we did last week before I delve into this current week's course. So as a product manager, the word manager is a bit of a misnomer because you're not really managing anybody, but you are managing the product. So there's a saying that you have a lot of responsibility, but very limited power, in the sense that you don't control the profit and loss, the P&L sheet for the product you're working on or the company you're working on. And in most cases, you might be working on just a little part of the product and not the entire product. And, so you are the manager of the product and not the people itself. You manage the people in the sense that you are a communicator that puts all the pieces in product management together. So you are the central figure. And the analogy that I used was, think about an orchestra, a symphony orchestra. You have different instruments and different instrumentalists playing the violin, the piano, the any instrument you think of, the trumpet, the drums, whatever. And you, as the product manager, you have a music sheet in front of you, and the team also has one, but you have the score. Each user has, or each player has the sheet for the instrument they're playing, and they know when to come in. But you are like the conductor. You have the master copy. You know where the drums must come in. You know where the cymbals must come in. You know where the violin must stop and when it must begin, where the piano must go. And you conduct the entire orchestra of the musical piece. In this case, the software piece that you're working on. So you lead and guide the whole process. And if there's vocals involved, you also control the cadence, the upbeat, the tempo, and all that. So they follow your cue and you lead, right? If you play a great song, the applause goes to everybody, the whole team. But if the song goes bad, everybody blames you, right? So as the product manager, you put all the pieces together by getting feedback from everyone else. The problem is in tech, you have um, business needs, you have user needs, you have the tech team, you have user experience, you have data analytics, and all these overlap and intersect. And you, as the product manager, you are like the communications hub, the hub for the hub for the entire team. You are the one to prioritize. You prioritize, and you also a researcher. You have to go dig your heels in and research, understand your user, understand their pain point, understand what they need, and you prioritize that against the business goals, right? And also the capability of your team, the technical team that you have. And you're also a presenter. You are you lead the forefront, the charge by presenting the group's idea in a cohesive and concise manner. But most importantly, you are responsible for the ultimate success of the product, right? So whether it makes, breaks, it all lies on your shoulder. But when it's successful, you all share the accolades. And then I also went through what a product could be. A product could be anything. So I said product management is very broad in the sense that it's not just only in tech. There's also product management in the airline industry. Like they do have product managers who actually work on the user experience from the kiosk as you check in on at the airport. Some airlines have self-check-in kiosks. You don't need an agent. And then the seamless of printing your boarding pass, your baggage, and all that is also product management. There's a dedicated team that builds these products, and that is, performs these tasks for the company. And even we have product managers for physical products like the airline seating arrangements, right? How to differentiate business class from first class, or from economy, or premium economy, or whatever they have, coach, you name it. So the configuration of the seats, the lighting, the everything pertaining to that product is also product management, but that is more of a different type of product management. And there's product management in aerospace, which is airline. There's product management in transportation. I've been, considered for jobs by transportation authorities like in Massachusetts or other, states. So they have product managers who build things like, depending on where you live, you find out like the MTA, they change their systems every once in a while. If you're in the Bay Area, they have what they call BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit. It's all driven by software. They have, mobile apps that display when the next train is going to be. They have mobile apps that can sell tickets. They have mobile apps that does a whole lot of things. And they have product managers in all these places. So product is not only limited to tech, but tech is being applied to almost everything. Tech is eating finance, it's eating health. Tech is in aviation, tech is in every facet. Education, now we have educational tech products. So there's so much that tech does, right? So also I said in last lecture that, as a PM, you're not always in charge of an entire product. In some cases you are, but most certain cases you just have the management role or responsibility for just a section of it, right? So in some cases it could be just a feature that is assigned to you or to an entire feature team to develop it. So example, Facebook's news feed, right, has more PMs working on it, on different parts of it. So we have a Facebook news feed, we have people working on reactions, we have people working on comments, we have people working on advertising. There are so many people working on the same product, but different features, right? So, and the PM can also be split into platform. So there could be a product that you're working on that has different platforms. So the products that are on mobile, and those that are on desktop, and those that are on tablets. And sometimes PMs will be on only iOS, and some will be only on Android, or they'll just put together and call it all mobile. And then there'll be a team dedicated for the other facets of the product ecosystem. Am I clear so far?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I also want to touch up on some of the things that from last week, because I know Faloni couldn't join us, so I'm just touching up on those briefly. And let me see if I can share my screen here so she can see. So the different types of product managers, right? Let's see. So share and then make this bigger. Let me know if you can see. Can you see?
I can see it.
Okay. Okay. Why is it not single page continuous? Okay, I don't know what's going on here. I guess let me do it side by side, 2 pages. Okay. All right. So there are 3 types of product managers, right? We have what we call internal product manager. So an internal product manager works on tools or builds tools for people inside the company. So there are products like in certain companies, you have a product manager working on tools like a wiki for the a wiki board or Confluence or you know, anything that they use internally. So there could be that we have a product manager working on like a software that will calculate taxes or calculate the price for goods and apply the corresponding you know, state tax or any. I'm just trying to come up with an example. So you have product managers who you know are basically work on internal products. There are products that are not customer facing, they are internal, which means only people within the company will use it, right? And then there are what we call business to business, which is B2B product managers. So usually a B2B product manager, if you're working for a company that sells products to businesses, right? So let's say you're working for a company like Zillow or Trulia or Realtor.com, or working for a company like what can I think of? So Facebook is a you know, business to customer, but B2B will be say working for a company like HP, business to business, where they sell products to other businesses, right? So your clients are usually companies, and you know, as a PM in such a role, you have to interact with salespeople of that particular company, right? And then we have business to consumer, which is known as B2C, right? So that is the most common. And your average, you know, the client is the person who uses the product that you are actually working on. And such a role requires, you know, a lot of creativity and vision, and being able to get feedback from users, and analyze the data in order to adapt the product. So you are listening into your user base and understanding what the product health is, the pulse coming from the end users. So some of your stakeholders, I think Shantae asked a very brilliant question earlier this week. So stakeholders come from different parts of the business. Some of them could be your users, some could be shareholders, lawyers, that is legal. So when I said legal, there's some products that has to be cleared by legal before you ship, right? Some products that have to be age verified. Products for kids, there are certain products that cannot be used in different different countries or different states prohibits their use. As a product manager, you are not supposed to know it all, but you should know what to do when you don't know it, to get a subject matter expert to guide and lead the process, right? So sometimes it requires clearance from legal. So the team will have a legal counsel that you talk to, and sometimes it will require talking to marketing. So what I mean by marketing is that there could be an issue that may come up that requires, you have to work very closely with marketing, because before you launch a product, marketing has to have an input, and they need to be informed and know when products are going to be be released. Marketing needs to know, because marketing knows the cycle, the user cycle, the seasonality, when will be the ideal time to actually release a product. So these are all, like, very important stuff that, as a product manager, you should, the kind of people that you'll be talking to on a daily basis. Okay, so we've talked about the different types: internal product manager, business to business product manager, where the clients are your companies, and you interact with salespeople of the company, and sometimes also with their legal, so when you have to come up with legal documentation and whatnot, and also sometimes with their marketing team. Then we have the business to consumer aspect. So you have to figure out the kind of person that you are, your personality. Do you like to deal with people, or do you want to work on like internal products where it's usually a good place to start? You're able to learn a lot about technology and how to integrate with other systems. There's less risks and there's more number of users. So when it's an internal product, it tends to be less be more forgiven when you mess up, because it's used by your fellow, your coworkers and your team. So they are more forgiven than when you're shipping out to actual, users in out of the building. So internal PMs usually are the nice and easy way to break into PM, because the bar is a bit lower in terms of expectation, but you cannot drop the ball. Then you have the business to business. It's not as wild as dealing with users, because businesses, you can be in the tens of thousands, but not in the millions. Well, sometimes it could be, but rarely would you be in an industry that serves millions of businesses. It could be a possibility. So if you are in a company that has B2B for, let's say, Tesco or Tyco Foods, or let's say, for some reason, I can't even think of some of the B2B businesses, but, you'll be dealing with just the vendors and their marketing team, their sales team. So you have a relatively smaller number of users, but internal has very small number. Business to business has some number of users, but not as many as business to consumer. And when you're doing B2B, the main thing metric here is the revenue that you can generate, right? And you're working with tight deadlines, and you're working closely with the other product managers of that company to find common ground. And sometimes you're working on maybe just one platform, or very rarely would you be working on multiple platforms in such situations. And then the business to consumer is the more common type of product management. There's a lot of uncertainty and pressure because the user base is in the millions. So you're working on like an Amazon, where every single day you have hundreds of millions of people using a product that you are the PM for. The performance expectation is really high. You could be juggling multiple platforms like web, mobile, tablets. In some cases, it could be Kindle, it could be e-reader, and so forth. And it could be even servers and any other thing that comes in. So there's a high risk. The company can lose money. So those are usually very careful when you're hiring, right? And you have to do a lot of user testing to really understand your user base, right? So some of the characteristics of an internal PM is to being able to prioritize. Number one, you have to be organized. You have to be able to juggle multiple, conflicting priorities, and you want to be able to be decisive, be able to make a decision, because you cannot satisfy the whims of all your stakeholders. But your decision should be backed. Whatever decision you make needs to be backed by data. Data is king. You should be able to communicate very clearly what you are, why you're doing something or why you're not doing something. And that should be the guiding North Star. You should be very diplomatic in your decision making, right? That is, even if someone could be telling you to do something that makes no sense, you should be very diplomatic in explaining to them and support your evidence with data and tests and all that. And then you should also be, self-driven and motivated. Pardon, it's all coming up side by side. I don't know how I can make it be. I guess I can do it that way. Okay. You know what? For some reason, oh, that's what it is. Okay. So then the business to consumer, these are some of the traits of the business to consumer. So that's the one we talked about. You're dealing with a lot of people. Internal is very few people, but business to consumer, like you're working on a Facebook product or Snapchat. So it could be Facebook or any of the Meta products, WhatsApp, Instagram. You're dealing with millions, close to billions of users. That's if you're dealing with Facebook, right? And so that role usually looks for people who are visionary, right? Who are very intuitive. They are bold and ready to just go on the unbeaten path, right? Explore with a lot of ambiguity and being able to navigate that boldly. You also have to be very detailed and process oriented, right? You have to have a system that you work with or find one that works for you. You have to be very analytical. So you don't just become like a short order cook or a waiter and just take a laundry list of tasks and requests and then try to get them all done. You have to analyze through them and be able to make judgment calls based on data. And even if there's a conflicts with your initial vision, you should have the flexibility to adjust course. So you like the pilot flying from LA to New York. You should be, it doesn't always fly in a straight line. There'll be turbulence. You have to, change altitude every once in a while. It might veer off course, but you still need to be able to land the plane at JFK without a problem, or wherever airport you're going to, O'Hare, you name it, right? So you have to be strategic. That is, know how to work with cross-functional team members to drive a vision, right? You have to be able to drive the vision and connect the dots and be able to do, not just be visionary and have your heads in the cloud thinking all day and daydreaming, but you have to come back to reality and have your feet on the ground to put in actionable plan on how to execute, right? And then you have to also be empathetic. Empathy is that you are the voice of the customer. You represent the customer to the organization. You are the face of the voice of the customer to the business, to tech, to legal, to every aspect of the business. So you have to understand your users. You have to spend time with your users, analyzing their data, testing and getting feedback to inform your decision making. So you have to also understand who you're designing for in order to create the best experience possible. So as a product manager, empathy comes in the form of looking at the existing product and doing a product teardown, trying to use it yourself, which is called dog feeding, which means Will the dogs eat the dog food that you're making? You test it out yourself. You see where there are, roadblocks, where there are kinks, and you take notes. And then you also would do user testing, where you going and you're actually testing out the product and chiming in with your users, helping to understand where they currently are. And so user surveys, you can conduct surveys on the product. You can do focus groups. You can do, so many things. So you can do surveys. You can actually go into the user's office or observe them in the wild, right? You do usability tests to gather that empathy. So you can see, you empathize with your user. And then lastly, you have to be, sure of yourself. You have to be, confident, right? So you have to be able to make a decision on a hunch and be confident about it and have the data to support it, to prove it. And then we have the business to business, which I touched on earlier. The emphasis is on businesses. So those kind of roles, usually you have to be very vocal and talk a lot. You'll be working with a lot of people that need to be able to get your points across. So you have to be communicative and also be attentive, not just talking, but also listening. Have a listening ear to understand your user base so that you're able to communicate back, parrot back what they just said, right? And being attentive allows you to be able to anticipate what's next for your company and not just what's currently in your space. You have to be very fast, dedicated to the company and learn the company in and out. And the company needs results like yesterday, right? So you have to be on your toes, ready to really move fast and get data. And then you be very collaborative, working to navigate through a lot of sea of opinions, right? Everybody has an opinion. You are the manager, and you don't just shoot down opinions, but you have to be very diplomatic. But you collaborate with team members, and sometimes you have to reach out to other, what we call dependencies. Some of the products you're working on may have dependencies on other teams. So you have to basically, you have to be the one to be there to answer questions, right? And fill in the gaps. You have to be a problem solver, right? Without having enough information. You have to be ready to find what information is. You need to know which stakeholders in the company to talk to, which VP to talk to, which director to talk to, which data that is hidden somewhere that you don't know. And with everything else, you have to be very confident in your decision making, right? Okay. So, we've touched up on these things, different types of product managers, which you have to decide which one fits your mold or your temperament, and which one will be the best for you. So I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes and ask if you have any questions so far.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Do the research tools differ from each, like product manager role you take? So are there different tools for internal or business to business and business to customers, or do you use the same tools?
You use similar tools, and in some cases you use the same tools, and in most cases you use different tools, right? And I'm going to tackle that as well later on in the course. So since you asked that question, I'll shed some more light on it. So you have to always have a log, a way to keep track of what is currently being, what needs to be worked on, right? So you need to have a tool, like a project management tool, like Jira or Asana. There's one also called Rally. There are so many of them out there. And your company, depending on the company you join, they may be using one of any of these types. So it could be Jira is more common. Rally, some companies use Rally, some use you know, Asana, and some companies also use some an integrated product management tool called AHA. There's a product plan. There's so many flavors of tools. So for example, if you went into business B2C, which is business to consumer, you find out that you need to do, the tools will be a little different because you have to test for users, right? So you have to also conduct what we call usability tests. So usability test means after everything is said and done, you need to be able to test the product with a sample users and get feedback, take notes, right? You have to do user testing. You have to also do what we call A/B testing. So usability test, there are so many companies and products out there that you can use. And then you depend on the company and what they use, you pick that. And then there's something called A/B test. An A/B test is also called a multivariate test, which means with varying options or varying processes, which one do you pick? So the way you decide is using an A/B test. So we change the button and then we place it into the left, and one of them we place it to the right, and then the third one in the center, or you have a different one altogether. And then you split out the cohort of your user base. So you have each one doing something different, right? So you have different users, user base, and then testing out the different variations. And then you have a metric and benchmark to see after you conduct the test, which of the options gets the most adoption, right? So that's called an A/B test because you have different versions of a landing page or different versions of a checkout process or different versions of a login, and see which one has the less friction, which one has the highest adoption. And then you bring it back to the team and say, so then you're not making decisions in a vacuum and saying, oh, we're not going to use your designs because a UX designer and the UX team have done something that looks really nice, has all the nice colors and everything. But unfortunately, in your A/B test, you found out the one that was plain was the one that was getting the most conversion and the users loved the most. So yes, you've created something that looks like Times Square and it's very beautiful, but it's not converting, right? So product management also means that you are diplomatic and respectfully decline by using data to support your decision. So you say, hey, I know you put in a lot of hours and weeks to come up with this design comp, but my testing shows otherwise. They prefer this simpler approach. Maybe the color scheme is not the best. It looks beautiful to the eye, but when you put it out in front of the users, they actually drop off. They get confused. There's cognitive overload. They don't know where to go. There's no direct pipeline that is shepherding them towards the whole user experience. So those are some of the tools that you use. For B2B, you are not dealing with the users base are actual enterprises. So the language changes. And the key metric here is dollars, right? Revenue. So you're dealing with salespeople, and some of the problems that you deal with is maybe sales teams are not able to understand the actual product. It's not clear to them. They don't understand the user base, and you as a product manager has to be the advocate to get them on the same page. And then, of course, internal tools. What you don't need to, even though there'll be some A/B testing, but you don't need to like have a whole big budget to do a test because the people that use it are in the company itself. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome, Romy and Iana. Okay, so I just want to also touch upon things like product management and project management. They all have the word management in them, but they are very different, right? So project managers usually are responsible for accomplishing a project, right, and not a goal. So the project is okay. project managers deal with when things get done, right? So when they start, when they get tested, and when they get done and what shipped. That's what project managers do. And then they look at the resources that are needed to get that done, right? So that's what a project manager does. Product managers, you need to have some of that skill, right? In order to execute on the product, but that is not what you're hired to do. Some companies with a bigger budget or footprint would have a product manager and also what we call a product owner who takes on these other tasks that will free the product manager to focus on doing user testing, user requirements, and talking to UX and gathering all that information, prioritizing them and giving them to the product owner to drive that initiative with the engineering team. And then it's another layer. Some companies will have what we call program managers. So program managers are embedded with the dev team, and they basically are the glue that makes things work. They make UX and product and engineering and everybody work so that everything comes together, right? So, and as a product manager, what you should think about is your keywords are, who are we building this for? Or maybe before you start that, you start with, what are we building? So you define what is being built, who you're building it for, and why you are even building it, right? So the what, the who, and the why are the three responsibilities of the product manager. The how is the work of the engineering team. How to implement it and bring it to life is the work of the engineering team, the UX team. So we have strategy and tactical team. How to bring it to life and to fruition is the work of the engineering team. And then the when it launches, you have a say in it too, but that is not your focus. You have a goal to achieve. Are we looking to adopt, get new customer bases? Are we looking to increase revenue, to retention, engagement? That is your goal. You focus on the what we are building, who we are building it for, and why we are building it for them, and prioritize according to that. And the how and the when, you should be able to come up with a roadmap. But if your team has a project manager, they will be driving that initiative. But that is depending on the how big your company is. So this is just like a typical day in the life of a product manager. So you come in the morning for your 9 to 5, you check your tech news, check your emails, make sure you are always reading up on your industry. If you're in fintech, you should be reading on Business Week, Economic Times, Bloomberg, and looking at the trends in your industry. Also, you should, so this is like looking at the whole ecosystem as a product manager. You should keep a pulse on your competitors as well, understanding what is current, are they launching any new features, how is the adoption, how does your product compete or positions itself against theirs. And then you have to keep your eyes on your metrics dashboard. So usually you work with another, depending on the company size, like my other companies have a dedicated analytics team. So they help hook up all these things for you, but you do not interpret the data. So the metrics is every morning, you want to make sure that you can see how many daily active usage you have. So from yesterday, you had let's say 100 million users log in. Today, how many are logging in? If today is down to 40 million, you've lost 60 million. What is going on? That is a cause for alarm. You have to keep a track on revenue, keep a track on the metrics on, so we have activation. How many new users are you acquiring and activating? How many, that activation means they don't just come in and download, but they actually sign up. How many people are actually engaged? Engagement means they sign in and they actually use the app. And then retention, how many people sign in and come back daily? Some people, like Facebook, when it first launched, had users come in, all the time. consistently. But then now they realize that it's tapering. People are, people are now moving away to different platforms like, Instagram. And that's why Facebook acquired them, because the PMs are like, wow, we have seen a drop here. People are not using our products as much as often. So that informs the decision to what? We need to either acquire them or create something similar. So keeping an eye on your metrics, tracking when they're down, finding out the reason why they're down and what has affected them. We're going to go a little deeper into that in the course of the course. And then you have what we call startup meetings. So the startup meetings is like, this is where all your team members come in, and then you have a meeting with them. So you typically, if it's a new initiative that you're starting, this is where you explain to them, get on alignment with everybody based on your research you've done over the months. You're kicking off a new product. You've defined what you're building. You know the who. You've done the persona, which is the user segmentation, and you understand all the user bases within that particular field. And then, you explain all this and the why we need to build it and the data to support it. So your startup meetings could be a project kickoff. You have the timeline and the roadmap ready and the data to support it and get insights from your team. If it's something that you've already started working on, the startup meeting will be maybe you're ready to start. So you do a product, what we call planning. You plan the sprint. You have your backlog items prioritized with your team. So planning is not done in a vacuum. You do this with your entire team involved, and they have an input. Because you might be prioritizing something that you think will take only 2 weeks, but will actually need 2 months, right? Because engineering can say, hey, hold your horses. That sounds simple, but there's a dependency issues with this other team and whatnot, right? So that way, the team always knows, right? The team always knows what is going on, and they can give any objections and say, hey, this will take this long and whatnot. And the planning also involves assigning numbers, arbitrary numbers to how long it will take to get that particular thing done. And you have that input from UX, that input from engineering, and you have it all to prioritize the backlog. And then you size the stories, and then you prioritize which ones need to go into sprint. And the startup meetings is when you also go to kick off the sprint. So sprint starts, and let's say you do a 2-week sprint cycle. So every 2 weeks you have a startup meeting, right? But then every time of the week, there'll be some sort of a meeting that you pulled into that you have to have tabs on. So after a sprint cycle, you have what we call a retrospective. Sprint retrospective, which means you come back with your team, assess. We took on 50 story points. We had this number of developers. We were able to finish only 40. We couldn't finish 10. Why couldn't we finish it? Okay, we thought the story was simpler. We should have broken down to maybe further units so we can spread over extra sprints. Or something came up that just messed up the whole sprint cycle. What was it? We raised a spike to check and find what it was and find a solution and decide to reintroduce it back to the next sprint. So retrospective, everybody gives their what's in the feedback. Maybe UX says, hey, we were dependent on these guys to get this, but we didn't get it. Or, hey, one of our team members was sick. So what do we do? Do we replace them with a temp, or do we, whatever? So these are the times that you handle those things. And then you talk about metrics. I checked the metrics. Metrics are doing well. We launched this product last month. I've checked over 2 weeks, and this is the 3rd week, and it keeps on an uptick, what we call a hockey stick growth. Okay, everybody's happy. Or no, there's a problem. External factors. We have a server down somewhere. We have a political unrest. So Instagram comments and likes have gone down in Europe because of the war going on. Or it could be internal. The metric system is not working as we thought it would. So all these things, you have to address it with the team. And then you're going to have meetings with designers, talk about problems, give feedbacks, and think through solutions and work on current ones. And then, you take time to write specifications, which include product requirement documentation, writing specification tickets, grooming, writing user stories for upcoming features, right? And then, so you're doing a mixture of those. Testing has to be ongoing. You don't do it all in one day. So these things are like a typical day, but could be done over certain periods. Like we have a Wednesday, every Wednesday, we all have to be logged in for the UX team to do a debrief, what's going on. So we probably start off with everyone sharing something fun over the weekend. Hey, this guy's getting engaged, or this happens to somebody just as a team. Then we move on to, okay, what's going on now with business? We talk about all that and blah, blah, blah. And now you be doing testing. If you have a QA team, you should be close to them, testing for bugs and making sure bugs are being reported and being fixed. It could be a bug like a text is not readable, or the login is not actually connecting. You have to bring in the right team to bring it, or you have to do the research to find out what's causing that and get that resolved ASAP, or prioritize the bugs. Some bugs, like for one company I worked for.
So you're not gonna say thank you and you're just gonna walk away?
What's that?
So
Hello?
why are you giving me attitude? That's what I want to.
Hello?
I think she unmuted herself by accident.
Oh, okay. All right, sorry about that. So these are some of the things that you have to be doing. Like, that's why I said, a product manager, you are like, you are in charge of, you're leading the whole charge. You're making sure everything is being done. You sometimes you have to be the one to get coffee for the team, some donuts and coffee for the team. You have to always be on your toes, ready to give an answer. Your product is your domain. You manage it. And at any given time, when you put into any meeting, you should know the metrics. You should know what's going on, what's been shipped, what has not been shipped, and why. Like everything, bugs, everything about the product is your responsibility, right? So this is just a sample of things that could happen. Like, you can have meetings, sometimes you have sprint, like I said already, I was also ahead of myself, to do sprint planning or retrospective on Mondays. So that's like if you've done 2 weeks of coding and designs, you have a retrospective to find out what went in and what didn't go in, any roadblocks, any issues. But most days, so Mondays, you can dedicate that for sprint planning or retrospective. And some companies do every 2 weeks, some do every 3 weeks, depending on which one. 4 weeks is a little too much, because then your team is building too much without not having enough signals for you to be able to check, to be able to now catch any errors. So 2 to 3 weeks is usually the right cadence. And then there's some days of the week where you'll be meeting with other stakeholders. There could be an issue with legal that you have to have a time with the council, schedule a time with them, and you have to be very concise and precise. Have your questions directly and present them and say, hey, these are the issues I have. These are my concerns. What does the law say? How do we circumvent these issues? So all these are collected and ready to be dealt with. Sometimes it could be an issue with, like, for example, my role was working on a global navigation system, highly visible role. It's a highly visible role. Every department touches my department because they need my product to search, to go to shopping cart, to add anything they have to do. They have to go through me. So the search team, I need to have constant communication with them, with their PM. If we change anything, it breaks their system. So I have to have that. They're a stakeholder. Sometimes you have to talk to finance, you have to talk to all these people, but not all the time. You have to schedule some time on your calendar to be able to address these stakeholder management meetings that come up. Sometimes you have meetings back to back to back to back. You have to figure out which meetings are more important, which ones you don't need, right? Okay. Yeah, so Ayana asked a question, the difference between sprint planning and retrospective and Scrum ceremonies. So I'm gonna go into details on those, but not today because there's a session where I'm going to really go. We're actually going to do all these things so you can understand the product owner or the project management aspect, the agile aspect of these ceremonies that happen. So I did mention some of them, which I can touch on them real quick. So, for example, the planning is bringing all the team together to plan the sprint. I had this conversation with Shantae during the week. Where the stories come from? They can come from tickets from customers. They can come from complaints. They can come from bugs. They can come from your VP. They can come from sales, everywhere. They write their tickets and they dump it in your backlog. You go in occasionally and, periodically, not occasionally, but periodically and what we call grooming. You skim through and figure out some of them are not important. For example, I had a situation where we had a text that ended with a Y and it was underlined, but the underlining cut the Y and it looks like the underlining was extended and that piece looks like a dot. So people were getting confused about the copy. So these things are important, but it does not, you have to prioritize it. It does not impact the overall health of the product. So there's no need to spend so much time on that. If people cannot log in or people are not able to even access the app, you prioritize that. So grooming is you going through your backlog. Yes, I see you send us a ticket, but it's not that important. So we leave it to the bottom, right? And when you have gone through and groomed, which means you need to go make sure each ticket that you need to address, you have everything needed to take that to your team, because your team needs to be able to focus on what they're building without being bombarded and pulled out of stuff. When they're coding, they're coding. When they're designing, they're designing. So you need to be the one to go in and check, okay, there are a list of these issues. When we say it's groomed means a ticket came in about they can't log in. What do you mean they can't log in? Which device? You figure out what device it is, which platform. You have a screenshot of what needs to be fixed. You have everything pertaining to that story so that now it can be considered by the team collectively during your sprint planning. So you have to groom first before you plan. So when your team is planning a sprint, you now go in and say, hey, these are the stories that I have. They are ready to be taken into sprint. Now let's plan. So we talk about them, you've prioritized them based on what needs to be built. That's why you're the product manager, because you are prioritizing what needs to be built. Once you prioritize, they build it. But if what you're building has no value and is wasting engineering resources and time, it's on you. So you groom and plan. And then once you have the storage groomed and prioritized, your team rallies around and do a sprint planning. Which ones are we taking in? This ticket is ready to be taken in. Let's look at everything's ready. Okay, designs comes out attached. All the edge cases have been explained. Everything that needs to be going to that story is there. We look through all that, and then we say how long we think it'll take. So we had what we call t-shirt sizing. Is this a small, medium, or large, or extra large? Some people use a 1, 3, or 5, or 8. So anything that's a 1, that is a priority, you add to the sprint. So you size it, give the numbers, and that gives you the total number of sprint stories that you can, user stories you can take in. So engineers will go through and say, you know what, this is an 8 because it needs to be broken further into its components. So that has to be addressed before you even continue. And then you know how many stories your users are able to take, your development team can take at any given time. So you don't over the past year, they've always been able to take about 40 stories per sprint cycle. So you don't give them 60 because that will impact their velocity. Then when they do perform the sprint and the sprint is done, before you start a new sprint, you have to do what we call a retrospective, which means you're going to go back and look at what went in. Were we able to finish all your stories? Maybe there was a bug, or we encountered more issues that a new ticket has been done for that. And what are the dependencies? All these are addressed around that time. So you have to always be on top of that. I hope that answers that question, Liana. Okay. So a lot of these things I already touched on, like user tests of new features. These are some of the things that you don't do them every day or every week, but they have to be scheduled. And these are some of the things that you do as part of your work, right? So some cases you have to meet with the data science team to look at data. So sometimes I do a request, I put in a ticket that, hey, I need to have information about this user journey and how many sales you are making on this product that we launched. I want to see if it's working or not. So the data science team will provide that for you in a printable document you can present. Depending on the maturity of the company, sometimes they may not even have a data science team. So you have to wear that hat as well, which will not be fair, but that's a lot of work to do. But you're the product manager. So depending on the team you're in, you have to do all these. But if you have that, they will provide you with that data. So you have to use the user behavior, because it's one thing to build. You have to have you have to have the signals that are showing that what you're doing is actually working. So that's the data science team. They look at historical data, current data. They look at all the other factors and they bring it all home to you to make sure everything makes sense, right? Then there are times when you have to test what has already been shipped. So when you are done with the product sprint plan, and as your team is building, you don't just go sit and twiddle your thumbs or take a vacation to Cancun or to Europe or wherever you tickles your fancy. While you set up the team on to start build that sprint cycle, it usually takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Then you need to be looking at what was already built and doing user tests on those, testing out the new features that were just shipped to get insight. So whilst the sprint starts on a Tuesday, but it'll end the following whatever, or starts on a Monday, or however you schedule it. So whatever day you start, you have 2 weeks to get it done, or 3 weeks. So whilst they're coding or designing, you are now testing what was done the previous week or the previous month, testing it and getting data from the data scientists, understanding and comparing notes, talking to stakeholders, doing your A/B testing, and then you present metric milestones you put together a report to present to your executives, your directors, your VPs, your CEOs, your CPOs, to show them that Shantae is not just you have to keep them in the know. You are not just justifying why they need to you are to be there. So whilst all this is going on, you're testing, you're doing your A/B testing, you're talking to data science, you're getting all the information that you need, you're getting all these metrics and grooming and all that going on. Then you need to prepare like either monthly reports, even if you're not ready to give them, prepare them, put them aside. So every 2 weeks after each sprint, you keep a note, get the data, keep notes, keep data, keep insights, and then you get all that together. So you can send it every bi-weekly or weekly, depending on your capacity or what cadence you can keep. What that does is it keeps your all the people on the product in the know, and it makes you look also very responsible and productive, because you would have to do. All right, I had to mute because there's an announcement going on where I am. All right, so you need to like be in the know and making sure that all this is being done, and because you have to do like a quarterly report. So don't wait till the quarter ends and now you're trying to remember, what did we do in March? How about in February? When you keep notes and you're putting the reports out there, like newsletter, a 1-pager or 2-pager, you send it out. So your VP can also talk to his senior VP, who can talk to his CPO and a CEO, so they know, okay, they don't come to bother you because you're always giving them status updates. And then you can do the mother load of all of them, summarize it, and get it all together and create your quarterly report and get all the insights very nicely done, bound and PDF, and send it to them. And each quarter you rinse and repeat. You're keeping them in the flow, right? Then depending on your seniority, sometimes you have to meet new employees, help them to be orientated, or sometimes you have to be pulled into interviews and all that. And then you can have open house for the team, other teams to know what you're working on. And sometimes you will set up a Friday to do acknowledge team members and say, okay, Shantae, release this new product. It's been 3 months now. We have a 15% adoption from 5%. And now is added maybe 20 million to our bottom line. Congrats, Shantae, yay. Next person, oh, this person has done this, acknowledge your team members, pat each other on the back and all that. So as you can see, PMs is a very dynamic role. There's no boring, no downtime to even like sit back and just play. There's so many things that happen. Now, where do PMs product inspiration comes from? They can come from so many places, from blogs, reading up on, we already talked about this, blogs, reading up on places like, mind the product, always be learning, So these are near and far is about products, psychology, building products that are sticky, products that has things built to them. So you have to be always in the know, reading up on these things so that you are always in the know and ready to talk intelligently to your designers, talk intelligently to your developers, right? Go on Twitter, follow the guys who are like the heavy hitters who are getting a lot of followers. Like I'm friends with Dan Olson and Ryan Hoover. At least those are the two I can say I have had interactions with. Dan Olson actually shipped me a copy of his book when mine was stolen. My car was broken into in California on the Apple campus after my Google interview. I put it on Twitter, and he responded and shipped me a replacement book. That was very nice of him. Ryan Hoover, I spoke to him years ago when he was starting what was called Product Hunt. So out of these two, I know a couple of them, always have some dialogue with them to always learn. The list is exhaustive, but pick which one works best for you, right? So any question? I want to take a little pause and ask if you have any questions before I continue. Okay, so I'll take it that no questions right now. So I will continue. So as you can see, there was something called the product handbook. I'm gonna get that and send it to you, so you can have all that. It goes into how to get actually, let me share my screen again. How to get a product management job. It talks about, I'm gonna share with you anyway, but can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share this.
I see it too.
Okay, I'm gonna share this product manager handbook for you. Goes through the whole thing that we were talking about. It does interviews of all these luminaries. Let me see if any names I remember, I can see here. At least I know Jackie. Jackie went to my school. I know her sister, but she was ahead of me, so I know of her. So this, talks how to get a product management job. We're not going to go through all this. I'm going to share with you so you can read in your leisure, and all that. So it goes through all this stuff, which I'm going to share with you. And then, Jason Shah, I know him personally, Harvard graduate. We spoke back in the days, but this is because I've been in the industry for a while, so I know some of them, not all of them, but I know quite a few influential ones as well. So I'm going to share this with you, so you can have it and be able to, work with that. So we still have about 15 minutes left. I want to go through, I think we can go through some of these slides that I had. So let me do this and then recap. So this is us going through the product ecosystem, which is discussing how product management actually works, when you are now in the wild, getting things done. Okay, let me know once you can skim my screen.
I can see it.
Okay. So, just a quick preview. We'll just go through some of these slides. And so, understanding the product role, understanding your customer, and building an MVP, how to measure and refine your product. These are all things that you are required to do as a product manager. So, in the product management role, you have the customer here. They have their needs, they have their pain points, and then you have tech here. Technology could mean what are the assets your team currently have, your company at your disposal that can be leveraged to achieve the goal, right? So that's your tech needs. And then you also have the business needs of the company. So customers usually have a lot of requests. Not all of it can be accommodated, but everything has to be vetted through the lenses of the business goals. Are we looking to increase revenue, adopt new customers, retain new existing customers? And do you have the technology in place and the requisite team and skill sets to pull that off? So these are the things where you as a product manager sits in the middle. So this is Marty Kagan. He's an OG in product management. He says the role of the product manager is to discover a product that is valuable. Emphasis on valuable. So product that has valuable and value to the user, to the business. Usable, meaning that it is, simple. People can use it. It's delightful to use. There are no roadblocks to using it. It's intuitive. It's a joy to use. And then feasible. Feasible means that you should be able to pull it off. You can come up with like a teleporting tool. Well, as far as I know, that doesn't exist yet, but so we may not have the requisite technology to pull it off. So that might not be feasible. Sometimes people want you to build a search functionality into a product, and they don't understand the search itself, it's a unique product on its own that will require a separate team to work on. So you as a product manager should know when to tell them, hey, I get it that you want X, but we need Y in order to achieve Z, and be able to deflect and have people be in the know, right? So that's the feasible. And I think we've gone through all these things. Product managers come from developers that become product managers. They've been in the fray. Support customer service people can also become product managers. Marketing, we have product marketing managers. People from sales teams can also segue into product when they are working on, like, say, Salesforce. They've been selling it, they understand the product, they've been working with the customer base and understand very well what the product does. So they can become a product manager in that role or that particular genre, because they have actually been embedded in it and know it inside out, because they've sold, or they've rendered support, or they've actually developed it. And then business development knows a whole lot about it too, because they have to determine revenue and P&L and all that stuff. And then you have design or UX who actually do the creative design, who come to the point where they want to now lead the team. And project managers who focus on the when, the timeline and all that, but they sit in the product management ecosystem for so long that they end up becoming what? There's a saying that when you spend too much time at the barbershop, you end up getting a haircut, right? So likewise, they have been around the talk, they've been around the ecosystem, and then soon they will become part and parcel and want to do it. And then there could be the use case where it's a founder that has an itch that their own personal pain that they want to solve, and they end up becoming product managers. And we went through this also. I'm touching up on again. You touch as a product manager, you will be part of the ideation stage, the product conceptualization. You have to be working on the product requirements, which is the PRD, product requirement documentation. You have to be part of the touch development because you have to interact with them and guide in prioritizing what needs to be built. Also, you work with QA because you have to write your user stories with what? Test capabilities. What's the acceptance criteria, which will serve as a basis for the test that will be carried out on that product when it's ready to ship. What is your acceptance criteria means? How do we define that this is done? And how do we define that it's working? And how do we now say this thing has no bugs, let's ship? So you'll be dealing with products, other product managers, commercialization, which involves the other stakeholders like business and C-suite people, support, customer service support. You'll be involved with that with them because you would have questions coming from that arena. There could be support tickets. And when you spend time with them, you find out that you're getting a lot of user complaints that has to be brought to the forefront before it's too late, right? So these are ways that as a product manager, you have to have your ears to the ground, like literally, and you're managing a whole host of stakeholders in a way that you create a cohesive environment, right? Cross-functional. And maintenance of the app. You have to know when an app has actually lived its life and has to be sunset, right? Because in some cases, it's actually costing the business more money to keep that app running or that product running. Or that product has to now be maintained and be improved. So that has to also be with you. And then the business intelligence, plus the data science people and all that has to be in your purview and be able to talk intelligently to them, be able to understand the data they're providing and give your insight and analysis as well. Any questions so far? Okay, so if no questions, we can continue. So to reiterate, you are the jack of all trades, but I'm usually not a master of all. But the other part of that statement is that usually it's better than, a master of one, right? So you're a jack of all trades. You're not a master of all, but at least you're better than someone who's just knows one thing, right? And that is what you should have, that always be learning. The learning curve, you should adopt a lifelong learner stance, which means you are always learning. There's new things to be learned. There'll be new technology because tech is dynamic, tech is evolving, and tech is everywhere. Tech is now even in dealing with shrinks. Shrinks there's an app called Alma, where you can now see your shrink through your phone. Tech is in education. Tech is in finance, called fintech. Tech is in, you name it, tech is there. So wherever industry you go in, the key here is to understand the tenets, the two belts, the skill sets that you need, the requisite skill sets. And then you educate yourself profusely on the industry. So you have a pulse on how the industry that you want to go into works, so that you become the subject matter expert of that industry. Then the rest is now applying your product management tools to it. Writing user stories, doing your discovery, asking questions, answering questions, managing stakeholders, managing expectations. I can share a quick story. I don't know if I share with Ayana, but I had an issue with a client. There were different expectations, and the deadline was actually today's Tuesday, so it was supposed to have been today, and they wanted to get things done for cheaper. Oops. All right, sorry about that. They basically had limited budget, but a very tight deadline, and they added more features or more to the work and want it done by a specific date, right? So it requires a lot of diplomacy and tact to really explain things. And in my case, some of these are very demanding and overbearing users or clients. And it requires you to literally, sometimes you feel like you want to just tell them off, but that's not what you're called to do. You have to be very tactful and be able to manage this. And, this client just went off on me 2 weeks ago. And now, as of this week, I've been able to presenting data to the CEO of that company and explaining whoever is the head of that product, explaining why meeting that deadline from when we started and the increase in the scope and everything, and the audit that was conducted was not really a legitimate audit. It was a bogus or more or less of a scam. But I used the data to inform. He just apologized and now is looking for us to give us more time and be more realistic timeline, and is willing, we have to now increase the budget and be able to build this and get it done and done right. So these are some of the things that as a product manager, you have to be part shrink, like as a psychologist, a part social worker, dealing some, when productivity is low, you have to find out why it's going on. Maybe your team member is dealing with some life issues that you don't have any, clue of. So these are some of the things that you have to be very, have your feelers down, and that's what they call that. Product managers have to be empathetic, not just to the users, but also to your workers, because they are, not your workers, your team, because they depend on you as you depend on them. So that's that symbiotic relationship that has to be finely tuned and finely managed. So I have a few more minutes. I'm going to ask you if you have any questions that we can address. Hello?
So if a stakeholder is being disrespectful, is there any other way to, I guess, combat that?
Can you please repeat that again?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
There's some
I was-
background noise.
Yeah, I live in New York, so always background noise. So I was saying, if the stakeholder is disrespectful, any other ways to combat that besides the one that you just mentioned?
Did somebody hear it that can type it or repeat what she said?
She said if a stakeholder is being disrespectful, is there any way to combat that?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Shante. Yeah. So, with anything, there's, there's a limit, right? Obviously, if a stakeholder is like threatening your life or being vulgar or anything of those, that is just unacceptable, right? There are ways to combat it. Always tact is the way to go. Definitely don't say, catch me outside, right? Or return fire with fire, right? So you have a very disrespectful stakeholder and all that. It happens. Some people are insecure and don't want to be exposed, so they want to be always on the offensive and be the ones to have the last word or make snide comment. Usually, the best way is you can directly go to this person. This is more like a behavioral type situation. You can go in and say, hey, on this date, you first of all, this happened, they were rude to you, blah, blah. Okay, you extricate yourself from the situation. You go back and sit down and analyze what happened here. Okay, maybe they had a point. Maybe you didn't communicate yourself well. Maybe this, maybe that. Okay, write everything that happened, and then say, you know what, hey, I need to have some time with you. Sure. Hey, on this day, we had this conversation and this how you answered, and that really didn't sit well with me, right? And maybe there's something that I didn't explain well, or maybe there's something that was missing that maybe I can help you fill in. Oh, you know what? I was just having a bad day with my wife or having some issues with my, okay. Could you please not repeat this kind of a behavior in the future? Because it's not very good for the, for, uh, cordial, work, whatever, the lingo. Or you go up to them and you just present the situation. Because first of all, you want to go through addressing it with the person first, letting them know, hey, this is what I feel. And I felt really disrespected and insulted when you cut me off or when said this comment. If they were like, you know what, hit the road, man, or go pound some sand. All right, you then have to find who their superior is, right? And say, hey, this is what happened. You approach them to talk to them, and this is the response they gave you. And then if that doesn't work out, you bring so you talk to them first, talk to their supervisor, or you can also let your director or VP or whoever know so that they can have a quick conference and say, hey, this is the situation and what's up? And they say, oh, this or that, or they stop. Or then now it's a written report, it's living and breathing, everybody knows about it. And they will decide what they do with that person. But never take it upon yourself and cuss them out and give them the talk to the hand or snap and all that. You just be very professional because it's a job environment and two wrongs never make a right. At the end of the day, you're all gonna look foolish in front of the so yeah, be diplomatic. And it happens. This guy, what happened to me, literally, he was talking about, oh, then we have he's going to take the project away from me. He's not going to pay me. And, but he will require me to help the other guys to get things started and blah, blah, blah. And he just went off and on. And I'm like, we just go our separate ways in a clean break. And I said, okay, you have the right to do whatever you want to do, but I think you're making a wrong decision. And you have been misinformed by these guys because they don't know what they're talking about. And he's like, well, I mean, I'm just, I can get my lawyers. I'm like, well, you're not the only one that has lawyers, but I'm not going to have this conversation right now. This conversation ends here. And I just disconnected and give it a week. The CEO came back. He was in Greece. He's a Jamaican guy, came back, we spoke, and he said, I heard what had transpired, and I just want to hear your side. He was more diplomatic. So I spent time with him on Monday, which was yesterday, explained everything to him. I gave him the data, everything. And he's like, you know what, Nathan, I'm very sorry. This is not how we want things to be done. I can understand if you don't want to work on this anymore, but we would really like for you guys to continue, blah, blah, blah. What can we do to make this work? I'm like, given my conditions, he's like, okay, I'm going to give you full access. This guy's not going to manage this anymore. This is not how we work. You have full reign, and if you need time, whatever, let me know. I responded back to him today. We had a meeting. The team is willing to work on. We're happy. We're not going to work on that jerk, and we have the full autonomy to work on this. So, but because we added more scope to it, we have to increase the budget because we had to do more work within a short time. So I'll get it back to you within a couple of days. Is that okay? Boom. It comes back. Yeah, that's okay. And hey, could you do this, do that, resolve that, and then you move on. So it's all about being tactful. It's all about being tactful.
Okay, thank you for answering. I guess I thought we could escape bad customer service.
Oh yeah, I mean, trust me, you'll get some very bad people. I mean, I don't want to even repeat the things he said, call me names, and I have it on text. So, and he's like, send me a copy of all those. And I could have just answered and, go let him know, give him a piece of my mind. But at the end of the day, I do what's best for the company all the time. Okay. Do you guys have any other questions before we wrap up? Romy, do you have any questions? Hello? Shantae, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. So I will end this here. It's almost 9 here and 8 on the Central Time. And I will have the recording ready for you by tomorrow and the slides as well.